Hello, and welcome to the Formal Review. Today, we'll be talking about the 2021 film, Nightmare Alley. So sit back, relax, grab your drinks, and let's talk about this movie.
What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Formal Review. This is Season 4, Episode 25, and I thank you all for tuning in once again. So this episode will be an analysis on the newest Guillermo del Toro film, and then a ranking of where it stands in his overall catalog. So stay tuned.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. Like, how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps that people like to listen on? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every single one of those questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing my podcast. And best of all, it's absolutely 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with some great sponsors. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. Again, that's anchor.fm/start. And I can't wait to hear your podcast.
Now, before I get into anything, I want to preface this episode with a slight spoiler warning. I will be talking about some of the details of this film. I will be doing the best that I can to not completely ruin the movie for you. Having said that, I will suggest that you do go see the film first before hearing what I have to say about it, so you fully understand everything. But if you don't care about that, just keep listening. Also,
I know I talk about this at the end, but the data shows that most people don't listen to that part, so I want to talk about it here and reiterate the importance of leaving reviews on your favorite subscription services. I do read those because I do want to grow, because these episodes are really for all you listeners out there, and I want to keep this entertaining. So what do you want to hear? Do you want to hear games? Do you want to hear more of the 4K stuff? Do you want to hear me talk about a certain movie? If you want to come on and talk to me about something, if you want to debate, I'm always open to do stuff like that, so you can always reach out to me on social media. I always want to grow and improve, and
just because something works doesn't mean that it cannot be improved.
So if there's something that you want me to improve on, let me know, and I will grow as such.
so let's get back to the movie at hand. So sit back, relax, grab your drinks, and let's talk about this movie. Nightmare Alley is a neo-noir psychological thriller film directed by Guillermo del Toro from a screenplay written by himself and Kim Morgan. It is based on the 1946 novel of the same name written by William Lindsay Graham, and it features an ensemble cast of Bradley Cooper, Kate Blanchett, Toni Collette, Willem Dafoe, Richard Jenkins, Rooney Mara, Ron Perlman, Mary Steenburgen, and David Strathairn. It is the second film adaptation of the novel, with the first coming in 1947. So the novel has been noted as a study of the lowest depths of showbiz and its inhabitants. It shows off the dark and shadowy world of second-rate carnivals, people filled with hustlers, grifters, and also Machiavellian femme fatales. Now, looking at the author himself, at a very young age, his parents divorced and he had a lot of acne as a child. As such, he attached himself to the people at the sideshows in Coney Island, and he accepted these people as human beings, and debatably more importantly, they accepted him. He once said that, quote, "Perhaps we are all freaks doing the best that we can with the handicaps that we carry through this world," end quote. Then, in the late 1930s, he had joined the American Communist Party and went to Spain to serve the Republican cause. Then, in 1939, he returned to the States after being traumatized by war and having tuberculosis. He was hospitalized because of his depression, and then in 1940, he attempted suicide twice before undergoing psychoanalysis. However, this did not stop his writing, but throughout his life, Grisham suffered from alcoholism, infidelity, and physical violence. Now, his wife's biographer stated that Grisham suffered from, quote, "cynical bouts of insomnia, anxiety, paranoia, and also impulsive behavior." And Grisham was quoted on saying that his mind was filled with a nightmare. So in 1944, his novel was published, but his drinking increased and he suffered from what he described as a nervous breakdown. And even though he said said that his mind was in a nightmare, he then started seeing the people that he once knew as if they were all living in a nightmare. Now, the novel itself had gotten very positive reviews, with the Washington Post calling it, quote, a sinister, compelling piece of fiction that will shock some viewers but will send public clamoring to the bookstores, end quote. So what is Nightmare Alley? So the book makes it more of this existential place where a dreamer known as Stan Carlisle tries to make a life for himself, but in a world that is filled with terrible people. He's running in this tunnel toward this light, but he is so far away from it, and the light is getting smaller and smaller. And in this story, he's this magician, and he becomes this somewhat anti-hero. And he struggles in a way that's very similar to Gresham's real life. Gresham thought of himself analogous to the carnival folk, so knowing his story really shows the background of the overall story of Nightmare Alley and really how much a writer's real life activities impact the story. And he knows of a way to show the audience something but doesn't really tell them everything, which allows some of the most impactful scenes to be very effective for allowing the reader to not have things spelled out for them. He didn't have to hold his reader's hand throughout the entire story. Then, in 1946, the novel made Tyrone Power, who urged 20th Century Fox to buy the novel and use it as a starring vehicle for him. The studio paid Gresham $50,000 for screen rights and rushed to film it into production. Then it was released in 1947. Now, this version kept a lot of the book's dialogue in essence, but there were some cuts and some different changes. The biggest difference is that Stan doesn't run out on Molly, and they essentially prep a typical Hollywood ending, which is very different from Gresham's point of view. Now, on the film's original release, reviews were mixed, and it was a box office flop. Now, today, that film is a key film in the noir film genre. And as of this recording, Rotten Tomatoes has it with an 88% approval rating after 56 reviews, with an average rating of 7.9 out of 10, and an 87% after 1,000 plus audience reviews, with an average rating of 4 out of 5. And the consensus is that, quote, playing against type with Nightmare Alley, Tyrone Power, and Edmund Goulding deliver some of their best work in a carnival set noir, unafraid to showcase true despair. Now, fast forward to 2017, when Del Toro said that he was going to write and direct a film adaptation of the novel. Now, he considers this adaptation to be of the novel and not a remake of the 1947 version. And that's because he actually read the book first prior to seeing the film, which is similar to how I experienced the film as well. I actually watched this for the first time prior to seeing this film, and honestly, yes, the book is a better version of it. Then filming began in January of 2020, but then in March of 2020 it was postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And at this time, approximately 45% of the film was shot, and so Del Toro spent a lot of his time editing the footage during this hiatus, and then production resumed in September of 2020, and then on December 17th of 2021 the film was released. Now, this film marks a big departure for Del Toro because it doesn't really contain any supernatural or monster elements in the traditional way, but there is some mystery and creepiness in the carnival aspects, and also it does show monsters in a more symbolic way than a more physical embodiment. And so this is a film that's right up the director's alley. Much like the director's previous work, this film has an amazing display of intoxicating visuals and production value. Once the film starts, one can easily tell that this is a Del Toro film. It starts with a low shot of a man dragging a body across the floor of an empty house, and then the man sets the house on fire. And this film really has an impressive cast and is a very haunting tale that has a lot of dread, but it also has wonderment to it. Now, like the novel, Stan, who's played by Cooper here, is a man running from his past, and even though the audience does not know everything about him, they see his memories of a burning home haunting his dreams and causing nightmares. He then joins this traveling carnival and discovers something special about this mind reader, Zena Krumbine, played by Colette, and her alcoholic husband, Pete, played by Stratharn. Now, he becomes extremely intrigued by the back and forth that this couple has, so he tries to learn all that he can from from them. Now during this, he also falls in love with Molly, who's played by Mara, and he wants them to go off on their own. She's a little hesitant, but after a tragic death, he then convinces her to run away with him. Now on their journey together, after they leave the carnival, they run into a psychiatrist, Dr. Lilith Ritter, played by Blanchet, and things start to change. Now that's pretty much all I'm going to say about the entire plot of the story, but because I don't want to give away too much, but this world that this plot takes place in is precisely what Del Toro really thrives in. And along with cinematographer Dan Louston, this film has some amazing production and really beautiful cinematography. And there's a scene where Stan is wandering through this house of horrors, and it's beautifully horrific. And even when the second act steps away from the carnival imagery, it's still a stunning film to look at. Del Toro really captures the visual aesthetic of the film noir style that is honestly both period accurate, but it somehow feels modern. Though the amount of cigarettes that are lit up in this film is a little jarring. Frankly, I feel I could have gotten lung cancer from this film. Del Toro is really able to capture the feel of a 1940s film all the way to the transitions that really feels if this film was made directly in that era. It's a visual treat that really serves as an homage to older films while also being a perfect film of the neo-noir genre. So when it comes to the acting, Cooper as Stan is fantastic, and he's able to create on-screen chemistry with all of his women counterparts, but also capture the darkness of his character. He's this cautionary tale of the limits of greed and also moral folly, that of taking advantage of people, and his acting really shows him to be both an anti-hero and a protagonist that you're rooting against. When it comes to the three leading ladies, all three are great, but the standout here is absolutely Cate Blanchett. The on-screen sexual tension between her and Cooper is ridiculously intense, and the most crucial part of any film noir is the femme fatale, and Blanchet nails it. She is part ingenuine, nefarious, and her presence on screen is ominous and mysterious that really creates an investment in her story and really plays out really well. And the side characters played by Defoe, Perlman, Jenkins, and Drayton are also really fantastic, and Del Toro is able to give his actors a moment to shine no matter how small the role is for them. However, as beautiful as this film looks and how great the acting is, the 150-minute runtime may be slightly excessive, but it's not that problematic. There are a few times in the middle of the film that do not have the same sense of urgency that really prior and post scenes really have, that really require. Though in these moments there are some really great character sequences. The way the film plays out is also fairly predictable if you're paying attention, but even so, it's really worth the time once you get to the end. Nightmare Alley will be known mostly for its atmosphere that Del Toro created, and also the solid performances from the entire cast. It is honestly another great film for this visionary filmmaker, even though it is a small step away for him. Frankly, there were scenes in this film that really made me want to see the Del Toro version of The Hobbit. Now, this is not to say that Peter Jackson was a bad choice in any way, but Del Toro would have been very different, and honestly would have been very interesting to see. Now, if you haven't checked out any of his films prior to this, he's an amazing visual director. He's mostly known for his Academy Award-winning films Pan's Labyrinth from 2006 and The Shape of Water from 2017, with Pan's Labyrinth winning Best Foreign Film and also The Shape of Water winning Best Director and Best Picture. Now, his films usually have this connection to fairy tales and also horror, but he also tries to show a visual or poetic beauty in a way to the grotesque and monstrous, and he always tries to show the beauty in the beast. He usually tries to have a monster of some sort because he considers them symbols of great power. He also tries to tie in a lot of Catholic themes and give stories that really celebrate imperfection, that also have amazing practical special effects. Now, as the director of non-short films, he's made 11 of them. 1993's Chronos, 97's Mimics, 2001's The Devil's Backbone, 2002's Blade 2, 2004's Hellboy and its sequel from 2008, 2006 Pan's Labyrinth, 2013's Pacific Rim, 2015's Crimson Peak, and the last being The Shape of Water. Now, this is in a pretty intensive list to go through, but I'll try to get through all of it. So I would say at the bottom of this list is Pacific Rim, and with this being the so-called worst one, it's not a bad thing. It's just frankly nothing more than a kaiju movie, and the acting is fairly average outside of Idris Elba. It's fantastically entertaining though. Then at number 10 is Mimic. This film is a great Del Toro film, but it doesn't have as much substance as the higher rated films. Then at 9 I have Blade 2. Frankly, as much as I like the first film, which is the better one, this one definitely is slept on a lot. It's a really great action film that honestly has an amazing production value. Then at number 8 is Crimson Peak, and this is perhaps one of my favorite production level films that I've watched prior to Nightmare Alley. It's a little bit more melodramatic than some of his other films, but the performances and the visuals are very, very good. Then at number 7 is Hellboy. This film looks amazing, and I feel like it isn't talked about as much. It really emphasized the beauty and tragic characters that Del Toro really goes for in a lot of his movies, but in a comic book world. Then at number 6 is his most debated on film, I guess, In Shape of Water. I know a lot of people aren't really okay with that film winning Best Picture. Honestly, it wasn't my pick for Best Picture that year, but I'm not trying to say that that's a bad thing. It has a lot of great production value, great performances, great music, and honestly, really an amazing themes throughout its entire film. Then at number 5 is this film, Nightmare Alley, for all the reasons that I said already. And then at number 4 is Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. I honestly wish that this film had a sequel and they could really conclude the trilogy, but it looks like we're never gonna get that. Honestly, the same can be said that I said for the first film. It's just really more obvious that Del Toro had a bigger budget for it, and frankly, that's not a bad thing. And then at number 3 is Chronos. This is his first film, but it's on a very small scale. Even so, it's able to blend horror with questions of eternal life and the price willing to pay for it, and it's absolutely fascinating. Number 2 is The Devil's Backbone. It's this period peace war film set in an orphanage that has supernatural elements, and it's about children who are confused about the world around them, and it is beautifully layered and very complex. And honestly, it is the spiritual prequel to the number 1 choice, which is Pan's Labyrinth. This film is an absolute masterpiece, and even saying that feels I'm still selling it short. Not trying to hype this film up, I think that there's a reason why it won Best Foreign Picture, and frankly, in this day and age, thanks to Parasite, if you were to release this again, I'm pretty confident that it could get Best Picture. That's how good it is. And again, it's not to hype this film up, because frankly, it can be creepy, which can turn some people off, but it's this fantasy that is shown through the eyes of a young woman trying to survive during war times, that also shows the horrors of war, childhood innocence, mythical creatures, gore, and also family emotion. It ties in everything that Del Toro does so well, perfectly, and honestly, the more I talk about this movie right now, it makes me want to go watch it again. And yeah, he's an amazing director, and frankly, all these films are worth watching at least once in the lifetime, but definitely I would say numbers 1 through 5. Now, what do you think of this movie, and where does this stand in your ranking of Del Toro films? Let me know. Hit me up on social media.
The Formal Review is on Facebook, Twitter, and the Gram, and also YouTube. The handle's all the same. It's at The Formal Review. And for anyone who has supported me on a financial basis, I thank you very much for supporting me in that way. For anyone who wants to support, you can go to anchor.fm/formal review and click support this podcast, and any donation is appreciated. Thank you all again for tuning in. And until next time, wash your hands, get vaccinated, or if not, wear a mask. And I'll see you at the movies.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Formal Review. Cheers, and we'll see you next time.